Senator, I have been reading a lot about how Donald Trump's popularity is down, and so the midterms are going to be bad for the candidates that he is backing. So what happened in Louisiana last night?
Well, Peter, here's the way I see it. Unless you're God's perfect idiot, the result was predictable. Ground control to Major Tom. The polls have shown for well over a year that Senator Cassidy was in trouble. I think the president's endorsement of Congresswoman Letlow was sort of the icing on the cake. Bill knew that. But he decided to run anyway. I respect that. I thank him for his service. He was very gracious in his concession speech. We now got a runoff between two fine people. For what it's worth, I don't plan to get involved. A wise man once said nothing. Why? Because he's a wise man. But I don't plan on weighing in. And, if one of them starts talking about my mama, I might. But otherwise, I'm just going to vote like everybody else.
And I think, without asking you to weigh in, it seems like this kind of supercharges Donald Trump's, the whole political operation, or it at least reminds people there is a president who is just a few thousand feet away from where we are sitting here right now, who still has a lot of juice.
Well, of course, President Trump's endorsement of Congresswoman Letlow made a big difference. But I'll tell you, there was another difference. My people are kind of angry right now. The political establishment at the state level put up 5 constitutional amendments and put a lot of juice behind them, and the people said no, not just by a couple of points, by an overwhelming majority. My people were also kind of angry about the election. We've always had, about the process, we've always had open primaries, and our legislature went to closed primaries, and a lot of voters went to the polls this time, and they weren't allowed to vote for the candidate of their choice. They had to pick one of the 2 primaries to vote in. And there was a little bit of confusion at the election because the legislature postponed our congressional elections, but went forward with the Senate election. But look, President Trump's endorsement had a huge impact. There's no question about that. But there were other factors, and as I said, Bill's been in trouble politically for over a year, and he knew that, and I don't think anybody was especially surprised, especially after President Trump weighed in.
So Trump has still got it, as if there was ever a doubt. The candidate that he beat, Kamala Harris, has decided recently that she is going to pull herself even further to the left, especially when it comes to the idea of expanding the Supreme Court and packing it with liberals. Listen here.
And so I'm inviting us all to basically say, look, let's engage in a good old-fashioned round table where we agree there are no bad ideas. And let's invite, then, approaches and ideas that are about, for example, Supreme Court reform, including the notion of expanding the court.
No bad ideas. Do you think this is a winner, Senator Kennedy, for the Democrats?
Well, look, I don't have anything against the vice president. I served in the Senate with her. She's a woke-topus. Nobody has ever accused the vice president of being a policy maven. Sometimes she acts like she has a billy goat brain and a mockingbird mouth, and that's a dangerous combination. My personal opinion is, for what it's worth, is that she's done. She's a smoked turkey. She had her chance and had her shot, and she missed it. I don't think she'll be the Democratic nominee. I would love for her to be the Democratic nominee. And if it looks like she gets any momentum, I will happily contribute to her campaign because she would be our dream candidate. I don't think the columnists at the Washington Post, for example, pay attention to what she says, but those guys, they like kale and cold plunges and carry NPR tote bags. They're members of the Loon wing as well, and they like what the vice president says, but I don't think anybody else is that impressed.
Who else appreciates a good Kamala Harris soundbite would be Sunday show hosts, so we thank her. House Speaker Mike Johnson had a great line about all this a few days ago. We're going to play it here.
These are institutional arsonists. It's a dangerous thing, a dangerous gambit. You don't just blow up the system when you lose. Remember, the Democrats started the mid-cycle redistricting.
And so I think the counterpoint there would be, if the institutions are generally unpopular, is it necessarily a bad thing being an institutional arsonist?
Well, look, the American people, we want to destroy democracy, and then they go out and try to destroy democracy. This idea of packing the Supreme Court because you don't like the way they're ruling, that's one of those bad ideas that the vice president says don't exist. I think Speaker Johnson's absolutely right, and but that's what the Loon wing of the Democratic Party, which doesn't represent all Democrats, but they're in control. That's what they stand for, and frankly, that's our best weapon. I mean, that's part of our strategy of Operation Let Them Speak. The more that Vice President Harris and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez and Mayor Mamdani want to talk like they represent the party, which I think they do right now.
And Senator Kennedy, last thing before you go, you had a big win this week. Your resolution that says senators won't get paid during government shutdowns passed. So my question is, which senator gave you the most grief about possibly losing a paycheck for a couple weeks? There had to be at least one.
Oh, I had several. Look, this was my third try. And the first time, Senator Rand Paul objected. Second time, Senator Brian Schatz objected. This time, I got Thune to let me bring it to the floor, and nobody objected. Look, it's a baby step. It's going to help. But if you really want to stop shutdowns, here's what you do, Peter. You say, look, every member of Congress loses his pay or her pay, and number two, you can't leave Washington. Now, if you did that, we'll never have another shutdown, but I didn't have the votes to do that, especially on the you can't go home part, so I took what I could, and I hope it helps. It doesn't apply to the House. It just applies to the Senate. I didn't want it to apply to the House because that's their business, but I think it'll help, but it wasn't nearly as robust as I wanted it to be, but I'll take the win.
Well, congrats, Senator, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, man.